Chico and the Man will not be presented this evening, and the Rockford Files will be seen 1 hour later than normal, so that we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. It's time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I'm happy to welcome Burt Kearns back to Word Balloon. We spoke when Burt released his book, The Show Won't Go On, which was famous for its collection of infamous deaths on stage, whether in front of a live appearance or during the shooting of film or whatever. But Burt, it's great to see you. Welcome back.
Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, the new book, my God, Burt, I mean, as I think people our age and maybe slightly younger, we all kind of grew up on the Three Stooges, and we love them so much. You got a brand new book out. Here it is. Boom. Shemp. Outstanding, man. And it's excellent stuff. A forward by Drew Friedman, including this wonderful Drew Friedman sketch, which is just big sketch. You know what
Drew
I'm
is
saying?
The best. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And, really, man, for years, I've heard you on as a guest with some of my favorite podcasts like Gilbert Gottfried's show back in the day and Dana Gould's show. And I just heard your fantastic interview with Dana about the Shemp book. No, really, man, I've really enjoyed your writings, and congratulations. This is another terrific book.
Thanks. And it's funny that, I had a book about Marlon Brando come out earlier this year just because of the way the book contracts went. I ended up doing 2 books in 1 year. And Shemp is getting much more attention than Marlon Brando, which is...
Well, and honestly, Burt, as a pop culture historian, let us refer to you as that. And I know you've had a vast career, and we've talked about your work in TV in the past and things like that as well. But it is interesting as the other generations happen. And I've been talking to a lot of my guests in general, and certainly young people today are afforded so many more entertainment options than when you and I were growing up. So we saw a lot of the black and white product of film and television. It was just there with the new stuff and, whatever. So we always consumed it. And I am interested as the generations keep going forward and this stuff goes further back, what kind of consciousness there is. I mean, the Stooges are still really important. And even Shemp, although it's always funny because I think, came to it after the fact. So we were always refer to Shemp as the fourth Stooge, but really he was the first Stooge, as you pointed out.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in that sweet spot right around the time that the Stooges first entered syndication on television. Growing up in the New York area, Officer Joe Bolton would have his show on, come back after school and watch the Three Stooges shorts. We had no idea that some of these were 20 years old or from the 30s or the 40s. But one thing we did, we loved Curly. Everybody loved Curly. I mean, Curly was, he was a big kid. He was like one of us. He barked like a dog. He spun on the floor. He was great. And then the way it worked was that the first couple of syndication packages, the first few dozen, were all Mo, Larry, and Curly. And then one day they started slipping in the Shemps. And we were like, who is this? Where's Curly? We want Curly. Who is this scary looking man? Who is this guy? And so it was a very thankless job that Shemp took when he took over for Curly. Because how can you can't replace Curly? It was only later when we got older, when we grew up, that we started to appreciate Shemp. When guys like Drew Friedman, artists like Drew Friedman, started using Shemp, as his muse, and we started saying, hey, Shemp is punk. Yeah, we like Shemp, and started to appreciate his work.
Yeah, all those great images that Drew was drawing in the 70s for, well, frankly, Shemp was on the cover of Screw magazine, kind of an infamous magazine. but also a lot of his stuff that he did for National Lampoon. And he would do that great stipple kind of fake black and white photographic art, which in fact his art today kind of resembles that. But that's the thing. I mean, it really does get to a photorealistic point. But you're right. I mean, him and oh God, now I'm blanking on names. The big guy, Tor Johnson from Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
Just interesting faces. Well, and as you point out, and I had certainly heard this, Shemp was voted in the 40s the ugliest man in Hollywood, and here's a prime example of why maybe he was so ugly.
Yeah, the ugliest man in Hollywood. He was appearing in a Damon Runyon film, Butch Mine's the Baby, with Broderick Crawford, about 1942 or so. I'll get some of these dates wrong, but the dates are correct in the book. And it was one of these movies that had a lot of characters, a lot of mugs, ex-boxers in there. It was those Damon Runyon type, Broadway boxer, hoodlum type characters. And somebody came up with a great idea of saying, well, wait a minute, let's say there was a contest for the ugliest man in Hollywood. And they picked Shemp. And he loved it. He ran with it. He said, you bet I'm the ugliest man in Hollywood. I'm a groundhog, baby. I dig it.
And retroactively, again, we think of Shemp coming after Curly. Meanwhile, and we'll talk about his vaudeville years, but also I really want to talk about after he left Ted Healy and really became a character actor on his own, and all the shorts and all the films, and I've snagged some of the images you have in the book, and Shemp was rubbing elbows with all of the great stars of the 30s and 40s. My friend Sal has a comment. He's like, Shemp was always fantastic. And he says, we have the same birthday. Right. So outstanding, man. Yeah. And he says, too, and here, great example of some of the stars Shemp worked with. His work with W.C. Fields as the bartender was terrific. Yes, the bank dick. And I even have the image to show people as we're speaking. Don't I? Maybe I didn't grab it. All right, I'll grab it as we're talking. Let's talk about, because would you say, Burt, that was the biggest non-Stooge role of what survives and is still seen today?
That's one that has been in our popular culture. W.C. Fields, the bank dick, and that was one picture where Shemp played the most human role in the movie. It's a wild movie. W.C. Fields is hilarious. Everybody's our cartoon characters. Shemp was the bartender. He was Joe Guelpy. He was really the heart of the film. And they say that he had a lot of, Shemp was known for his ad libs, and he was great at ad libs and one-liners. And apparently he came up with a lot of ad libs in this picture. But W.C. Fields said, sorry, son, I'm the comedian here. I'm the star. So they cut out a lot of Shemp's jokes. But this is where you could really see Shemp as an actor. We know the Three Stooges from their shorts, but from the time in the 1930s that they began their career making film shorts at Columbia, Shemp was making film shorts as a solo artist, right up against them. We didn't see them on television. We didn't see all the competitors that the Three Stooges had through those 20 years of making shorts from the 30s into the 1950s. And Shemp was really funny. He was a star in them. He was a co-star in some of them. He had, James Stewart was in one of his shorts. It was James Stewart's first role in pictures. Was
that the Thin Man movie, or
no? This was just a
short.
One of the shorts at Vitaphone.
Wow.
Which was filmed in Brooklyn. Fatty Arbuckle, the great silent film comedian, he lost his career because of a rape and manslaughter trial. Which, even though he was acquitted, he was kicked out of Hollywood. Early 1930s, Warner Brothers gave him another shot. He said, you can star in some of these Vitaphone shorts. He made 4 of them, and in 2 of them, Shemp was a co-star. And in one of the roles, one of the ones that he did, Arbuckle went back to his hotel that night after filming and died.
Yeah.
It was Fatty Arbuckle's last picture, and Shemp was in it.
Wow.
But Shemp had quite a varied career between around 1931 and 1946 when he rejoined the Stooges. He had a very good solo career as a character actor and as a star in his own shorts.
You point out that a lot of what we know about the Stooges starts with Mo Howard's autobiography, and I bought that as a kid and hung on every word. But it seems like through your research, you found a lot of the stories to be, a bit of puffery on Mo's part.
Well, I checked the message boards and I checked the websites and the reviews of the book, and I got a few Three Stooges fans angry at me, thinking that I'm a little hard on Moe in this book. But I got to tell you, I did not come into this with any preconceived notions of what the Three Stooges history was, or what Moe's role in it, and what Shemp's role. I mean, at the time we started this book, there had not been a book about Shemp. There had not been a biography of Shemp at the time we started. There had been books about Moe, Larry, Curly, Joe Besser, who followed Shemp, even Joe DeRita. There's a book on him. Mousy Garner, who was one of Ted Healy's other Stooges. There's a book about him. Nothing about Shemp. So I had to go back to, what was out there already. And, what I found was that I think I am one of the few, if not the only person who's written a book about the Three Stooges who's not part of the Three Stooges fan community. I'm not a super Stooge fan. I came at this as, a pop culture writer, as a journalist. I went into it and started looking at the facts, trying to find the facts. And I found that most of the books and most of what has been written, even some of the documentaries that are out there by family members are in the middle of these things, all go back to Moe's book. And I found that a lot of what Moe wrote was not true. It was very self-aggrandizing. You can forgive these old showbiz people. Moe wrote this book at the end of his life in the 1970s. He died before he could finish it. His daughter finished it for him. But he put himself in situations that he was not there. And a lot of what he wrote was at the expense of his older brother, Shemp. You have to remember that. Shemp was born in 1895, Samuel Horwitz. His younger brother, Moses, was born 2 years later. And the baby brother, Jerome, was born 6 years after Moe. And that's Shemp, Moe, and Curly. And when they started out, it was Shemp and Moe. And, Moe was the go-getter. You have to give him that. He was the go-getter. From the time he was 11, he wanted to be a thespian. He wanted to be a great actor. He wanted to be in show business. Shemp, on the other hand, was just really funny and charismatic. He was really good. He was a star. He was taller than Moe. He was funnier than Moe. And he was, as we see, he was more versatile than Moe. And he stuck it out longer than Moe, which is another thing. As you go into the history of the Stooges, Moe tells sort of an unbroken path from about 1923, when he met up with his old friend Ted Healy and they joined Ted Healy's troupe, to the end. He left out the fact that he quit the act for 3 years to sell real estate with his mother, while Shemp went off on his own with Ted Healy and really became a star on Broadway and in vaudeville. So there was a lot to learn.
Well, and you document it quite well. Man, it must have been tough because, in high school, I was kind of a precocious, and I said that with embarrassment, high school kid. And because of my love of the Stooges, I did a couple with our high school radio station, Three Stooges shows, and was able to get Emil Sitka and Edward Burns, the great director and sound man that worked with the Stooges. Yeah, Burt, believe me, I'm still saying, well, I couldn't believe these guys were sweet enough to tolerate my 17-year-old questions. And God, if I knew then what I know now, I would have gone in. I mean, I had no idea Edward Burns was a great Bowery Boys director, along with all the Stooges work. Yeah. I didn't know. But so it must have been really hard for you to research and get. I mean, I see Ed Burns quotes in your books and stuff, and I mean, certainly Mr. Burns passed away, I think in the early 90s or late 80s or something, and I talked to him in 82, and same with Emil. And Emil was so sweet, he even wrote me a few personal letters, which I still treasure. So great. Yeah, well, again, Burt, I'm sure you've got, great old people that you've interviewed and stuff that, you've had those moments, I'm sure, even more so given your body of work with all your books. By the way, Sal has already purchased the Shemp book.
Thank you,
said
Sal.
He loved it. And my good radio friend from CBS Radio, Rob Hart, says he loved your book, Tabloid Baby. So that's cool.
I took 25 years off between books after Tabloid Baby. That's a whole different story.
You're busy with TV and everything. I respect that.
But no, it wasn't that it was hard or frustrating. It was fun. It became, it became like a real dig going down these rabbit holes and going, wow. I was surprised as I was going through the history of what was real and what wasn't, and I had to like kind of sort through various people's books. Here's all the books that Larry wrote. Well, then you find out that the book that Larry wrote, that first one, he didn't really write. He had a co-author who made it up, and then so his brother wrote a book after that.
Mo's book, Mo Feinberg. Yes.
And he made up his book, and it was all even just finding out the details of when Shemp died. You read the story. You can't remember. We sat down for dinner at 7:00 or 6:00, and we had dinner at Mo's family, and then suddenly Mo got the call and left the room. It's like, wait, he didn't die till 11:30 at night. What are you talking about? He didn't die at dinner time. Larry has a different story, which seemed a bit closer to the truth. And then you finally go to Shemp's family. I mean, he has a daughter-in-law who's in her 90s now. She's still alive.
Wow.
And he's got with her, and he's got 2 granddaughters, and they have a Facebook page called the Shemp Howard Goyles Group, and where they answer questions and they give their memories of Papa Shemp, they call them, which is great.
That's beautiful, man. God, Sal is on fire today, and I'm so glad. We got a lot of people watching, man. But Sal's the guy with the comments. He says Del Lord, Jules White, fantastic Stooge directors. They also worked with Laurel and Hardy, didn't they?
Early on, that's where they started before they headed over to Columbia. Yeah.
Makes sense. All the shorts, I am fascinated, and I really need to do a deeper dive on YouTube because I have found the occasional, also just, bad print of a feature film as well as shorts that wouldn't make it on TV because it's maybe too washed out or whatever. But how much beyond, because we see the Columbia Stooges. In fact, I don't know if you get this where you're located, but one of the sub-Me TV channels, and really our local channel, but it's the same company, Weigel, they have a 3-hour block 5 nights a week that they call Comedy Classics that starts local time at 11 p.m. and runs till 2 in the morning. And they start with an hour of Stooges, then they show an hour of Little Rascals, then they show an hour of Laurel and Hardy.
Wow.
And that's the stuff that we grew up, watching in the morning or afternoon TV. I grew up in Chicago. In fact, the guys that are commenting are Chicago guys as well.
Right.
But how much of that non-Stooge, Little Rascal, and Laurel and Hardy stuff is out there to see these days?
Well, it's out there. I mean, now there's a Three Stooges streaming channel on YouTube and also like on Tubi, and these different streaming networks have nonstop Three Stooges where you can see them. They've got all that, but it's all out there in various forms. You can find some of Shemp's solo work. Private Buckaroo, San Antonio Rose. And then you find out what movies Shemp was in. He was in 5 Abbott and Costello pictures. He made 2 pictures with the Dead End Kids, right when they were started. And Hunt's Hall became, Satch became his protege. Really, he kind of taught Satch everything that he knew. The Thin Man. He was in one of the Thin Man pictures. He was in a Charlie Chan mystery. The thing with Shemp was he sort of was always Shemp, but you could drop him in any picture. In some pictures, he had a role throughout the whole picture, and he's very funny throughout. In others, he might have 1 or 2 scenes, like a cameo scene, but it wouldn't be jarring. It fits in. It's a little comic relief. He's really funny, and then he moves on. And that's where he winds up, in the beginning of a film called Pittsburgh. He plays a tailor up against John Wayne, Randolph Scott, and Marlena Dietrich, and there they are. They're all in the scenes together.
Who the hell knew that Shemp is in a John Wayne movie? And again, Marlena Dietrich and Randolph Scott. And you might be, I mean, John Wayne is obviously like elemental, and even kids know the name John Wayne. But Dietrich and Randolph Scott, I mean, and again, and it's so funny because I read Scott Iman's John Wayne extensive biography, which is incredible. And I've read about Pittsburgh. I've never seen it. But it is that wonderful surprise, as you say. I know when I saw Charlie Chan in New York, there's Shemp, as you say. And it's great because it's a great role, and he's only in a couple scenes, and he plays kind of a fake mystic from the Middle East.
Right.
Back then, that was a lot of actors would play against their ethnicity.
Oh,
and it's even part of the idea that, this guy's not only a real mystic, but he's not obviously really from the Middle East and everything. So it kind of works that way. But no, it's always a great surprise. Or World War II, my God, he's with the 3 Taylor Swifts of World War II, the Andrews Sisters. Who the hell knew? That's fantastic that he made a movie with them on his own.
Well, that's tremendous. That was 1942. That was, the first film he appeared in with with Abbott and Costello was called Buck Privates. And that was 1941. That was the film, an enlistment comedy before we got into World War II. And that was the film that made Abbott and Costello superstars. Now, Universal couldn't churn out Abbott and Costello pictures fast enough. So they started making Abbott and Costello pictures without Abbott and Costello. And one of them was that picture, not Buck Privates, but Private Buckaroo. And it was a comedy. It starred Harry James, the jazz trumpeter. He gets drafted and he has to go to basic training. And they had the Andrews sisters in it, just like they would in an Abbott and Costello picture. And Shemp played a Sergeant Snavely, very funny in it. But he wasn't the star of the picture until the suits at Universal started seeing some of the dailies and went, get rid of Joey Lewis, get rid of his stuff. We want more Shemp. And so this is the closest to a Shemp starring vehicle that you can find, and it's out there. You can see it on YouTube. And he's got a number at the end with the Andrews sisters, which is just killer. It sort of brings tears to your eyes almost, because Shemp just comes out and he's so great in it. Really,
that's great. And then truly, man, it's the more evolved Stooge fans understand, and you're right. We eventually do appreciate Shemp. I will draw the line for myself when it comes to Joe Besser and Joe DeRita. But and really, I even forgive Joe DeRita because by then they're all senior citizens, and it's and also another kernel of your book. Well, first of all, Sal wants to know, are there any Stooge shorts? But I want to include the feature length films that the Stooges made. Are any of those lost forever? Because I know there's like Rockin' in the Rockies, or going back to Dancing Lady, a Clark Gable, Myrna Loy movie where the Stooges are, or not Myrna Loy, it was Claudette Colbert, that the Stooges and Ted Healy show up. But are there any lost Stooge films?
It's funny. The only lost Stooge films are the lost Mo Howard films. Mo claims I don't want to keep getting down on Mo.
No, but I'm glad, Burt, it's okay. Because, well, first of all, you're in a safe place, but also, and I face the same hostility, because after I read your book, I was talking to friends that are Stooge fans, and it's like, yeah, I guess Mo kind of made stuff up in his book. And some of my friends like, well, he wrote that in his later years and memory. I'm like, I don't think so, man.
No. Mo claims that as a kid, Mo would take the train over to the Vita. It's called the Vita Graph Studios at the time in Brooklyn, because the Horowitz boys were from Brooklyn, and he would hang out by the front gates, and he would do odd jobs and errands for the actors and directors. And eventually, Mo said he was in about a dozen or more films and shorts at Vitaphone at Vitagraph, playing like the bully, playing the tough kid, etc. You can't find any of that, because quite conveniently, a few years later, there was a fire in the warehouse at Vitaphone, and all those pictures are lost. So even if you look on the IMDb website, they might put one of these names of the pictures under Mo's filmography, but it'll be a little note saying Mo's the only resource for this story, because they don't exist anymore.
And is it possible that Shemp was making Vitaphone shorts, and that Mo kind of co-opted these stories, or no?
Well, Shemp went over to Vitagraph after Warner Brothers had bought it, and it turned into Vitaphone, and he became a star at Vitaphone in the 1930s, right around the same time the Stooges were beginning their role over at Columbia.
Sure.
But most everything else, it's out there. I was talking about the Private Buckaroo. There was another picture that Shemp made that same year, right before then, also Universal. It didn't have the Andrews sisters, but it had other singing groups. And this one was called San Antonio Rose. And again, it was an Abbott and Costello picture without Abbott and Costello. It was about a group of musicians who were going to take over a roadhouse and turn it into a nightclub, but they're up against some gangsters who wanted to do it.
Sure.
And they had an Abbott and Costello stand-in. It was Shemp and Lon Chaney Jr. And the funny thing about this picture is how unfunny Shemp and Lon Chaney Jr. are, because Lon Chaney Jr. is very violent, and he hits Shemp throughout the entire picture, and it hurts to watch. I mean, it's not funny. It's like it hurts. And I quoted in the book a famous columnist interviewed Shemp shortly before the movie came out and brought that up. He said, "This looks like it really, you're getting really hurt there." And Shemp told him, he said, "Here's how you do it. Here's how you have to take a hit for real. You've got to take those hits." But wait, Can I read you his quote?
Please do.
Okay.
Excellent.
Howard Heffernan, right? He asked Shemp. He says, you were really absorbing a mauling in this picture. You're going to get hurt. And Shemp, this is where we talk about whether the Three Stooges really got hit.
Right.
When they were on stage.
Sure.
Shemp said, you can't pull a slap in the face and make it sound real. The way to take an open-handed clout is to be certain it lands in the right spot, full on the cheek. You take it as high on the cheekbones as possible without striking the eye, and far back enough so the force of the blow is absorbed, I don't mean to laugh, by the jawbone. That and rolling with the slap, and you can take them.
Wow.
So he was taking those hits, on stage and in film.
Well, you kind of contend in the book, and I don't blame you, knowing that kind of level. And that's not the only interview in your book about taking real shots. Yeah. I know there was that radio interview that is one of the opening moments of your book, where Shemp is talking about, I'll show you the lumps when I meet you face to face, basically, that they really are punches not pulled. And you contend potentially that Larry and poor Curly's passing, some of their ill health might have been from the slaps and punches that they took from Mo.
Yeah, Shemp died young. Shemp was 60. I don't know if that was really young back in 1955, but yeah, he died young.
Sure.
Originally, the cause of death was said to be a heart attack. He died in the back of a taxi cab, but his daughter-in-law is still alive today, and his family at the time, who was there, said no, he died of a cerebral hemorrhage.
Wow.
And so did Curly.
Yeah.
So eventually, after several strokes, did Larry. Mo would always say, I was a smart one. I took over Ted Healy's role. I delivered the slaps and the punches. He was the only one who he died of cancer. He died, I think it's at 77 in 1975. Larry was hobbled by strokes. He was at the actor's home for many years, taking phone calls from fans and talking to fans, when he was there.
Amazing. Yes.
But those three guys all, died from cerebral hemorrhages. And you've got, and there are witnesses, there are accounts from audience members, even family members, of what it was like watching them on stage. When they made their shorts, they had sound effects. I was saying,
sure.
You see a pie fight in the Stooges. It sounds like people are getting punched by these pies. Those sound effects are so heavy, but they didn't fake it on stage because, as they said, it had to be loud enough to be heard in the last row of
the back row. Sure. Absolutely.
That's what made it funny, unless you were up close and you were like, ow, they got hurt.
Well, and then you read like when Buster Keaton was a kid and, his parents would throw him around, on stage. No, that was just part of slapstick vaudeville. Slap is in the name of the phrase that describes the comedy. So yeah, no, it's absolutely real. Oh, Kari Sanders says, yikes. I had a cerebral hemorrhage when I was 10 from one good crack on the head on concrete in the playground. I have seizures now for the rest of my life. That's horrifying. She's a fellow podcaster. That's shocking to hear. And my dear friend Don Lenza says Private Buckaroo is great. Yeah. So that's cool that he's seen it. Yes, Sal is right. Of course, Mo appeared on Mike Douglas a few times. You can see those clips. And they even do the great Maha Aha routine with Mo, and and I think Ted Knight, and one has Ted Knight in it. I know one has Soupy Sales.
That was the thing, Again, Mo outlived Shemp by 20 years, and in the 60s, when the Stooges had their renaissance on television, suddenly they had a new audience. When they were making the shorts, you'd go to the movie theater to see a Jimmy Cagney picture or a John Wayne movie, and you'd see a newsreel, a Three Stooges short, and then you'd see the main feature. Well, suddenly, when they were syndicated on television in the 60s, it was kids. It suddenly had a kid audience. And again, you can go on YouTube, and there's a great interview where Mo is standing there with Larry and Joe DeRita, and a reporter's asking him about, their mothers are complaining about what's going on. Their kids are poking each other in the eyes and stuff. And Mo's saying, kids, we fake it. Here's how we do it. And he demonstrates how he doesn't really do it, but that's how they did it on stage. They had to.
Yeah, he claims, I'm going to put this out as an audio as well. He claims that, no. When I would poke him in the eyes, I'd actually make sure the eyes hit him on the forehead. And of course, you had that great, plink sound effect and stuff. Right. You know what I love for the great sound effects of the Columbia shorts? There's always one when somebody falls down. There's always like this fantastic, elaborate thud. And I noticed in the feature film, the Frank Capra movie, You Can't Take It With You, with Jimmy Stewart and Lionel Barrymore and Edward Arnold. And Edward Arnold keeps getting knocked down by this house of crazy people. And every time he gets knocked down, you hear that Three Stooges thud. And it's just like, oh my God, I've heard that for 50 years listening to it as a kid. And now, it's in a feature film. And I love that. Sal says he saw the Stooges. His mom saw the Stooges live at the Chicago Theater. There's Bert, have you seen that giant book just about the Stooges live performances that came out a year or so ago?
It came out right around the time I was finishing this book, and I was able to go through it and check a few dates here and there. I mention it several times in the book and give great, kudos to Gary Lassen for this monumental. I mean, the book is so heavy to begin with.
It's dictionary size, literally, everybody. I mean, it'll hurt your lap if you're reading it on your lap.
And if you buy it today he runs the Stoogeum in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Stooges Museum. If you buy it today, he's got inserts where he's found out more information. So it's building and building as he goes along. It's what a work of scholarship, it's great.
That's excellent, man. I have not been to the Stoogeum yet. Have you?
Tour de farce. No, I have not. I have not been there. I wanted to get there.
Yeah, I know. We all want to make the pilgrimage.
Granted in Los Angeles.
Well, and I started going into this early in the conversation. I'm going to come back to it. Like the generations today, you wonder, who's left that's under 40 that cares about these people. I mean, God, I remember poor Gilbert before he passed away talking about being at a party and meeting like an 18-year-old kid who had no idea who David Letterman was. I mean, so let alone this stuff that, like the Stooges and stuff going from the 30s through, the late 60s and everything, their whole body of filmed work, I
mean, kids, they say kids today, they have so much more knowledge than I did when I was a kid, but so much more information is being pummeled into their heads from so many different sources. Yeah. They don't watch television. They play games. They have their phones. They have TikTok. Everything's down into, 30 seconds, the clips, and try to show them a black and white picture or mention, if I say to them, I don't want to talk about my kids, or say, who's Marlon Brando? Who's the Three Stooges? I think I heard of them, that sort of thing. But then again, the Stooges, sort of like the Beatles, have this fan base today. That's of all the comedy acts from the 20th century, the Stooges really still have this fan base because they're it's just basically funny. These guys, again, like you said, they were roughhouse, hardcore vaudevillians, but their timing is perfect. They know how to take a hit. They know how to take a fall. They can throw a pie. It's just basic. You don't have to speak English to laugh at the Three Stooges.
Absolutely.
The Marx Brothers, you might need a college degree, or that's occasionally.
Well, it's more of a verbal dance,
right,
rather than just the flat out slapstick of the Stooges. Yeah. No, it's great, and I've seen others describe it as, and maybe it was in Drew's introduction, that it was like, no, it was the same kind of humor we were getting in the cartoons, but these were real people. Jumping around and falling down and slipping and falling, or taking a pie in the face and things.
And that was the thing. Mo, Larry, and Curly are cartoon characters. I mean, you could doodle their faces and say who there's Mo, put the little bangs on his face, and there's Curly, round circle, and there's Larry with the porcupine hair. Shemp was different. Shemp was like a real person. He wasn't insane like Curly was. He was as nimble as Curly, but he could dance well as Curly. But it wasn't as surprising to see it because he didn't look like Curly. But he was human. He brought a humanity to the Stooges. He brought the level down a bit as far as the mania went, but he kept the comedy going. And I think that was why it was a thankless job that he took when his brother Mo convinced him to come on board temporarily.
Really? Was it always considered like, you're just going to do this for a little while?
That's what it was in the original contract. I mean,
wow.
Shemp had a career. It was interesting. They brought, Shemp had been at Universal making shorts and appearing in feature films. And then he was hired over at Columbia. He got a contract at Columbia in 1943, right around the same time that Curly was starting to fade. Curly had some mini strokes on the road. You could see in some of the films, in some of the shorts, that he wasn't doing so well. He was starting to fade. So what did they do? They brought Shemp over to Columbia, and Shemp had his own series of shorts. Very funny. There's stuff like Bride and Gloom, things like that. He had a character, Woodcock L. Strinker. He was the harried husband. Great stuff. But he turns out he's working with the Three Stooges directors. He's working with a lot of the Three Stooges supporting cast. And sometimes he's working with reheated Three Stooges scripts from the old days.
Sure.
He's redoing them.
I'm sure.
He sort of was getting put into place. You know, Mo was just as Mo was ready when Shemp left the act in 1931 because they wouldn't give him enough money because he thought he deserved more money. Just Shemp, Mo was cool with Mo because Mo had young brother Jerome on the side ready to jump in, which he just jumped in, and Curly took over. So it seemed like they had Shemp in place whether he knew it or not. And so when Curly finally was debilitated by a stroke that just he couldn't go on after that, he agreed to do it temporarily, which he wound up doing it for the next, I guess, 9 years to the end of his life.
Yeah, the end of his life. Here's the great, and I had the still as a kid, but here's that great cameo that Curly makes in that early 50s. I think it was called Hold That Lion.
Hold That Lion, yeah.
And somebody's sleeping under a hat, and they pull the hat off, and there's Curly, and as he's snoring, doing a woo woo woo, kind of thing.
As the story goes, he'd shown up on the set just to watch his brothers. He was he hung on after that stroke for about another 6 years, I think. He was still around, and he showed up on the set, and Jules White, the director, had the idea, why don't we do a scene? We'll do the scene on the train. And that was the only time on film that you saw all three brothers together.
That's amazing. And how well did the brothers get along?
They were family. That was the thing. From my research and from what I hear and from what you read, they got along very well. Shemp had his own group of friends. His house was sort of where a lot of the B and C list comedians and actors and writers showed up. But Mo would come along, and they were a tight family. I mean, that was the thing. These were guys from the turn of the century, sons of immigrants, and the family was everything to them. And so, yeah, I mean, despite anything that you would hear about Mo and his business decisions and what he did with money, et cetera, they all lived very well. I mean, these guys weren't living in single occupancy apartments with a hot plate. They had nice houses in Toluca Lake. They had families, and
Mo really learned the real estate business from his mother because, as I understand it, took the Stooge money and invested very well in real estate. So that in his last decades and stuff, and also nice revenge. I know their Columbia contract was rather notorious for being small, but they always made public appearances. And then I'm guessing, and I'm hoping you might have the answer to this, when the shorts made the big splash on TV, and all of a sudden they were such a big live act, I don't know exactly what went into play to then say to them, hey, let's make new movies. But certainly they had their own production company led by Mo's son-in-law, Norman Maurer, and another man that I interviewed as a kid, having no idea about his comic book and 3D comic book background. I met his collaborator, Joe Kubert, when I started doing my podcast. And I'm like, tell me everything about Norman and the Stooges. He said, oh, God, it was great. I'd go to the house and meet with Norman, and I'd see Mo all the time. And, he said, especially like in the 50s and 60s. And so they kind of got, I don't know how big those contracts were, but obviously those movies were successful enough that they made like 5 or 6 of them with Joe DeRita.
Joe DeRita, yeah. I could be wrong on this. I don't think they made money from residuals from
the shorts.
From the shorts.
Yeah.
But they became one of the highest paid, if not the highest grossing acts in the country in the 1960s. I mean, they were at state fairs, they were at movie openings, they were everywhere. They had a real renaissance.
Kind of like the music business today, where the record labels are kind of, nowhere, and bands are really making their money from live appearances and stuff. Yeah. That's really their bread and butter. A couple more comments from the audience. Don asked if he missed the moment where we were talking about the bank dick, greatest straight man bartender ever. Yeah. And he said he was, yeah, absolutely. He said it twice in different ways. Yeah, absolutely, man. No, it's those roles. And I do want to go back. Oh, yeah, of course. Sal says, great cameo by the Stooges, and it's a mad world, certainly, as the fireman.
And
four
with
for
Charles
Texas.
Bronson and Frank Sinatra, Charles Bronson, Dean Martin, and 4 for Texas.
Boom. Yes, sir. Absolutely, man. No, that's a great movie. And that runs on Turner Classic all the time because it is a fun Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra two-hander. But yeah, man, the Stooges are working for Dean, which is great.
There's another great comedy act that's totally forgotten today, Olsen and Johnson. Right? They were a Broadway, two comedians. They had a Broadway show called Hell's a Poppin', one of these crazy shows where they had singing and dancing and comedians and one-liners, just sort of like laughing, or I'm trying to think what you could compare it to today. But it was a crazy show,
big variety show, like a big variety kind of format.
And they made a film. They made a film version of it, which is hilarious. And Shemp has a big role in that. He's great in that. And then they did a follow-up. Called Crazy House. Shemp's got another role in that. And again, you can see these on YouTube, and you go, "Oh, there's Shemp again." Great stuff.
And kind of like the Bob Hope, Bing Crosby movies, the road movies that would have a lot of inside industry jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
I know with Olsen and Johnson, it would be, "Hey, the greatest comedy team ever is outside. Oh, Abbott and Costello, let's let them in." And it was Olsen and Johnson instead walking in. And
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah.
And I know the Ritz brothers are fabled, like, oh my God, if you had only seen them live, because I guess their Fox movies don't do them justice for the mania that they were able to create in other venues.
Yeah, the Ritz brothers again it's a team that you had to see live. I mean, I'm actually working on helping out Jeff Abraham, who was my co-author on The Show Won't Go On, is writing like the first biography of the Ritz brothers right now.
Oh, wow.
I had a chance to look at it, and you get to see the mania they caused everywhere they went. They were an unbelievable team.
I know Mel Brooks and Jerry Lewis point to Harry Ritz as a massive influence in their comedy. And I know Mel used Harry Ritz in Silent Movie.
Right.
And there's a great little moment for Harry Ritz in that. And really, when you do see Harry Ritz, it's Jerry Lewis's baby character that, his immature kid he obviously got from Harry Ritz. It is. I'm a big comedy nerd. I follow this stuff. And really, Jeff has been very kind and gotten me some other great authors over the years to be on Word Balloon. Sal says, and he's right, that man, those Stooge character actors, he says Emil Sitka was amazing. So was Bud Jamison. So was, Joe
Palma.
Who say it again?
Joe Palma.
We'll talk about Joe Palma, but I'm talking about I'm talking about like Bud Jamison and who's the other? Vernon Dent. That was the name.
Yeah, Vernon Dent.
And Christine McIntyre, who was always a beautiful blonde. She's in a few Shemps and everything, and a couple curlies. But let's talk about Joe Palmer. Again, a dear friend of mine is Rich Coase, Svengoolie. And of course, Rich for years has been like the Chicago Three Stooges host. And certainly, like, people know him from his Three Stooges presentations as much as him showing movies and stuff. Right. But I'm like, let's talk about Joe Palma. Fake Shemp, for those of us who are a little more crass. Explain the phenomena behind Joe Palma.
Well, when Shemp died in 1955, the Three Stooges owed Columbia Pictures 4 more shorts. And that's even mentioned, if you go back in the newspaper files, it's mentioned in the reports of his death in his obituary. Shemp died, and meanwhile the Stooges still owe Columbia 4 more shorts. Well, Harry Cohn said, "I want those 4 shorts."
Yeah, nice guy. Yeah, sorry he's dead. Get back to work.
But basically, luckily for the production company at the time, by that time the Three Stooges films, the shorts, the budgets were never increased. They were kind of going out of style, the whole shorts market. So they were basically taking old shorts, cutting them up, adding a few scenes here and there. The Stooges went from working maybe 4 days on a short to maybe 1 day on a short.
Wow.
So what they did was they took a couple of pictures that Shemp had made, and they threw in a few scenes with Joe Palma, shot from behind, have his hair messed up or wearing a wig. And they would actually throw in Shemp's actual voice, or in a couple of times, Joe Palma tried to imitate Shemp. They cut that out right away. I think he did that in the second film. The third, he didn't say a word because you could tell that was not Shemp talking. And he became known, and for these 4 films, he became known as the fake Shemp. And it became an industry term, thanks to Sam Raimi, who I think he was doing Army of the Dead. And when part of some of the stars couldn't show up for a reshoot, so they had people stand in for them, shot from behind, and he credited them as fake Shemps. And so now, anytime in the motion picture industry, if a star can't show up and somebody's filling in, he's a fake Shemp.
I've heard Orson Welles in old interviews talk about Chimes at Midnight, and poor Orson Welles was always looking for more money to complete a film, and he said there are a couple scenes in Chimes at Midnight that none of the principal actors are actually in the scene, and they're all again much fake Shemps sitting on horseback or whatever to complete the scene. No, I honestly, and again, thank you YouTube, because someone out there has put together supercuts of all the moments of Joe Palma as fake Shemp. And yeah, man, I mean, literally his back is to the camera. All you see is his back. And like you said, either a crazy wig or a crazy hair. And you hear a bad attempt at a eep or something like that. And it's like, no, man, nice try. Whatever happened to, how come there isn't somebody writing a Joe Palma biography? Jesus.
That's probably next.
I'm hoping that Sammy Petrillo book eventually comes out, that whoever was writing that was always on Gilbert's show.
Dave Abrams from WFMU. He's the DJ in FMU.
Oh, okay. God, that station is amazing.
Yeah, he's writing the book on Sammy Petrillo.
That radio station, if people don't know, Cliff Nesteroff, the great comedy historian, really kind of made his mark at their website and everything, and appearing on shows. And the guy, Tom Sharpling, the guy who created Monk, always had a great show on there. Yeah, the people at FMU, what an amazing place. I mean, it's
great guys there.
Yeah, and great place for 20th century pop culture. No,
yeah.
And again, Burt, you're doing all these great books, and tell me about the Brando book.
Well, after I did a book on Lawrence Tierney, the actor who starred in. If people don't know who he was an overnight sensation in the 1940s when he played John Dillinger in the film called Dillinger. It was a low budget picture that became like the #1 box office sensation. He was a handsome Irishman from Brooklyn, New York. And after Dillinger came out, about 3 weeks later, he was arrested for being drunk. And then he was arrested about 2 weeks later for being drunk again and for being drunk and fighting. Anyway, the story of Lawrence Tierney is that here was a really fine actor, a great leading man. He appeared in some great film noirs, but off camera, he was constantly getting into trouble. He obviously had mental issues, but he made, I believe it was more than 60 films and more than 75 arrests in his career.
And for younger viewers and listeners, he's Joe, the criminal mastermind behind Reservoir Dogs, putting that gang together. He plays Elaine's dad on that early episode of Seinfeld, and would have likely done more if he hadn't pulled a knife out on the set and freaked everybody out. I was telling you off the air that Tierney was in an episode. He did an episode of Star Trek Next Generation that actually won a Peabody Award, but then later he was on the Deep Space Nine show. And Armin Shimmerman told me horror stories of that one day that Tierney was there. Wouldn't learn his lines. I also heard that about his Simpsons appearance, where he's the security. Yeah, he's the security guard that catches Bart shoplifting. Capiche? And then again, he refused to learn his lines. He's like, I'm not learning this crap. Forget about it.
Well, see, that was the thing with Lawrence Tierney. By that time, by the 1990s, when he was in his old age, still working, everybody knew you can't work with this guy. When he was in Reservoir Dogs, he got in a fist fight with Quentin Tarantino because he gave the first time director too much of a hard time. Tarantino had to fire him, and then they brought him back because they didn't have enough money to recast the role. But you knew you couldn't hire Lawrence Tierney, but everybody wanted to work with him. The producers said, it's Tierney. We want to work with him. And they knew that all hell was going to break loose. And 30 years later, they're still telling the stories. I mean, the Simpsons, they said, it was the worst day ever of trying to do something, but the most memorable. It was it was the greatest, honor to have Tierney on our set, insulting everyone.
Sal points out, great cameo in Arthur. He's in The Naked Gun. He's one of the baseball managers at the beginning of the game. And he says Arthur in the Diner. Pritzi's Honor, the fantastic John Huston movie with Nicholson and Kathleen Turner. He's the cop. He's one of the chiefs.
He had the final words on the series Hill Street Blues.
I didn't realize that. Wow, keep going.
He played the night commander, the night sergeant there, and the series ends. And Dennis Franz's character is walking out. I think there was a fire and that the place had burned down. They're walking out. And as Dennis Franz walks out, he says goodbye to Tierney. And then the phone rings. Tierney says, Hill Street. And that was the end of the series.
I didn't even realize. I mean, that's the thing.
Series. He was in just about every drama in the 1980s, every network drama. And he was also in like Tales from the Dark Side, playing an exorcist with Phyllis Diller, a comic role, which was hilarious. I mean, Tierney was a great actor. But anyway, I wrote that book.
Great book, man.
Looking for the next one. Thank you. Lawrence Tierney, Hollywood's a real life tough guy. And my agent and coach, Lee Sobel, said, Burt, you've got to write a book about somebody that people have heard of. So, all right, let's see. How about Marlon Brando? People have heard of Marlon Brando. Well, what happened was we were coming up to the Marlon Brando's centennial, 100th birthday, 20 years since his death. And the issue I had was, okay, we're going to write a book about Marlon Brando. There's been so many books about Marlon Brando. Peter Manso has like a 1,400-page biography. Brando's had his own book. What can I write? So I came up with the idea of looking at how Brando has influenced popular culture today, the work that he did from the 1940s on, how it's reflected today. And most all of it went back to the movie The Wild One, which wasn't his greatest movie. I think it was his fifth picture. It was a biker flick. At a time there were no biker flicks. But when you look at that film and the influence it had an influence on not just the youth generation that started, but rock and roll, the civil rights movement, very possibly gave name to a group called the Beatles.
Yes, Lee Marvin says, the Beatles are happy to see you, Johnny. Which is 10 years before the Beatles were in our awareness, even in England. So
so there was a whole chapter on that and just how the fight and going back and forth on whether or not the Beatles actually saw that picture, which eventually Paul McCartney did say, well, I think actually, I think that's what it was, which is pretty good. But so we looked at Marlon Brando's influence, used his career as a jumping off point, and then from there, who could follow Marlon Brando? Who has the raw sexuality? But Shemp Howard. Had to go with Shemp.
Hey, I'm glad, and really, I hope you guys at least see some sort of money from these projects. It's like, I can't remember the name of the Irish author that did a book of all of Bela Lugosi's monogram pictures.
Right.
And it was only a couple of years ago, because it's another press release that I would get because of my involvement going to San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con, that I get these things. And Jeff, I don't know how I get on Jeff Abrams' PR list back in the day, but I'm grateful as hell because he allowed me the opportunity to interview people like Steve Binder, the producer or the director of the 68 Elvis comeback special. And then for my purposes, the infamous Star Wars holiday special of the mid-70s. Yeah. He directed that. And in fact, while we're kind of in the word balloon comic book world, I have to acknowledge that Shemp was very big in a series that was based on a comic strip, Joe Palooka, the boxing, Ham Fisher's great comic strip, and he played Joe's manager, Nobby Walsh, and that was kind of not only in those shorts, but also kind of a recurring theme of a role in other Shemp movies, right?
Yeah, he appeared in maybe about 5 of those Palooka films, and he really was the star of it. The Palooka character himself, I think 3 actors played Palooka in those. They were Vitaphone shorts, and it was just sort of a tomato can, whatever you call that kind of.
Well, big galoot, yeah.
And Shemp was sort of the role as sort of as Nobby the manager who's always looking out for himself. So he had a very good role in that. But he left Vitaphone, I think because of that, because he was stuck. They started only putting him. He did like 5 in a row, and he didn't want to do that. I think he wanted to branch out even more. So he went to Hollywood. I mean, those were shot in Brooklyn, and that's when Shemp moved out to Hollywood. But boxing was also a big thing with Shemp. He loved boxing. You talk about, if you remember Jack Nicholson always being at the courtside for the Lakers, or Spike Lee with the Knicks. Shemp was always seen at the Hollywood Legion boxing stadium off Hollywood Boulevard, sitting ringside for all the fights, and if they had fights every week. And Shemp was, they say, was sort of a character in the fights. When they were fighting, Shemp would be imitating the boxers, and he'd be punching along, and the crowd would be watching Shemp as well as watching the fighters. And then when the bell rang, the cornerman would come over and wave the towel over Shemp. Interesting thing, they always, Shemp was known as being this scaredy cat, this phobic person, scared of the world. His daughter-in-law tells the story of the time he brought her and his son to the fights, and they sat down, and maybe some beers and some peanuts were brought over, and they were getting ready for the fight, and Shemp started handing out newspapers to everyone, and they're like, what are you doing? He goes, oh, you've got to cover yourself with the newspapers when the blood starts flying, because that's what's going to happen. So it's like Shemp was into it. It's sort of like I say it's like being at a Gallagher show. You don't want to get hit by the watermelon, but it's like in this case it was blood, and Shemp was into it.
Burt, I spent 16 years covering boxing for Ring Magazine and Boxing Illustrated. I can attest to, if you're really close to ringside, the blood is flowing. And many times on my own scorecard, I had flecks of blood from the ring. So no, I can attest to that. And again, I love, and of course Mo put that in his book as well, how much Shemp loved the fights. That's cool. But it is interesting that he was who walked away from him from being typecast, because again, like you said, there were a lot of Joe Palooka shorts and even a couple movies. I know I've seen the Jimmy Durante Palooka.
Jimmy Durante had them, yeah. There were a few movies, and then somebody else bought the Palooka rights after Vitaphone, and there were a few more. Because he was a hero. He was a hero. It was a very popular strip for decades.
Oh yeah. Ham Fisher was the cartoonist. I let my hair grow a little long so I could whip around and do almost a Shemp with my hair and everything. That's the great thing about the Shemp. He would always start off with the hair slicked back, after a couple slaps, man, he had that crazy look. I'll go back to what I chose for a good depiction of the Ugly Smith. That hair. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a great one. That's a great Emil Sitka short. And in fact, Sal even says, yeah, he was an amazing cast member.
Yeah,
and that's
Groom. That was one of his hot ones.
Yeah, and it also seemed like by the time of the Shemp shorts that the other character actors were given a little bit more business to do than those early 30s, like Curly Shorts, for example.
Yeah,
maybe that's my own memory, but it feels that way at least.
Yeah, like also the first 3 or 4 shorts that Shemp did with them were almost like solo. They gave him like a lot of room to do to show his stuff. That was the thing. We think of Shemp as being this scaredy cat phobic creature, because that was sort of the role that he played in a lot of the Stooges pictures, but it wasn't what he played before that. He never played a scared person in any of the roles that he played leading up to that. He had this bag of tricks that he could pull from. He had these Coke bottle foggy glasses where he would play the blind character. He played that throughout. He played two movies where he played a mute. He would play the loudmouth, the braggart. He would play the dummy. He played the mobster. I was saying, if you're looking for a very interesting Shemp picture to see, 1937, I think it was. It's called Convention Girl, and it's a comedy musical drama set and filmed in Atlantic City. Shemp plays this low. It's a film that seemed to get around the Hays Code, because it's really about a woman who is running prostitutes for businessmen, and she's a hostess in Atlantic City.
Okay.
And she falls for a gambler. He doesn't fall for her. Shemp is one of the other mobsters, and he and his partner pull off this blackmail scheme with the woman. And when his partner asks for his share of the money, Shemp shoots him. And again, I've said this a few times. I think I said it in the book as well. I feel like I was looking at Joe Pesci in Goodfellas.
Sure.
Where it's like he's funny, you're laughing at him, but suddenly he gets really scary. And you see this, and you see the look in Shemp's eyes when he just says, get out of my way, bang, bang, and shoots his partner. You're like, he could have gone a lot of other directions there.
Well, the cool thing is he was always employed, it seems.
Yeah.
And even from those years when he broke off from Ted Healy to rejoining the Stooges when Curly went down with the strokes and couldn't continue. And what a body of work. Here, Kyle Fegley says, we talked about it earlier, came to this late. Sorry if you already covered this, but I was surprised to catch on Turner Classic Movies the other day. Shemp short, Our Trouble, which, as you said, Burt, Jimmy Stewart's first screen debut. Yeah, pretty cool. I'm going to have to look and see if they still have that posted, because, sometimes they'll put some of their movies up for like, a few weeks before they take them down if you missed it live. I got to watch. I don't know if you watched it last night. The Jerry Lewis documentary about the day the clown cried that ran on Turner last night.
I haven't seen that one yet. I had seen the one that the German one that came out maybe about 10 years ago, where they had a lot of the clips from the film, and then the scenes they also acted out a lot of the scenes in a sound stage, but it was all in German. And
wow.
I'm a Jerry Lewis fan. Jeff and I are big Jerry Lewis fans.
That's cool. Yes, I noticed. I follow Jeff on Facebook. Jerry Lewis Tuesdays. Yes.
We went to Las Vegas to the Jerry Lewis auction when they auctioned off all his belongings.
Did you get anything?
Oh yeah. I got a few things. Yeah. But we had to sit through the first 76 items were guns.
Oh, jeez.
76 guns.
Of course, there were 76 guns. Yeah.
So we had to sit through all that first, but yeah.
My friend, who's a great storyboard artist in Hollywood, Gabriel Hardman, went to an open house of Jack Webb's.
Wow.
And saw a lot of cool like Jack Webb paraphernalia, like his set of whiskey tumblers and liquor flasks and things like that.
Stereo equipment, and he was a jazz man.
Yes, I know. Honestly, man, I am fascinated by Jack Webb. In fact, someone had posted, and I didn't know this. I'm sure you see him too on Facebook, almost mini articles about a subject, and they were saying that Webb was approached to be Dean Wormer in Animal House, and he turned it down because he's like, well, you're kind of making fun of the kind of character that I really am in terms of being straight-laced. And I'm a big old-time radio fan, so I love all of Jack's, not only Dragnet, but Pete Kelly's Blues and Pat Novak for Hire, and even his bizarre comedy sketch show that I guess there's only 2 episodes still in existence. And I'm not saying this is like balls out amazing comedy, but it was crazy almost, again, within the confines of radio censors, but it was crazy comedy in a National Lampoon, or dare I say, even a Python-esque sort of way. It was definitely absurd comedy. And of all people, Jack Webb, and it's funny. And it's cool seeing Jack Webb be funny.
Yeah. No,
but I'm a Jerry fan too.
Yeah. But Jeff and I had spent some time a few years ago defending The Day the Clown Cried after seeing that, saying, I'm sorry that Harry Shearer said that he saw it and how bad it was. It's really not that bad.
Interesting.
It's as good as Begnini's film,
Life is Beautiful. Yeah.
That sort of thing. And, there were a lot of reasons why we can't see it. They didn't own the rights to the property originally, and they ran out of money, and Jerry Lewis, walked away from it. But it's not something to be, ashamed of. I think some of the stuff he did in the 60s, in the late 60s, he would be more embarrassed about. But,
and it got, again, as a little kid, Three on a Couch and Boing Boing and, the movie with Tony Curtis and some of these other movies. They're crap. Or, God, Which Way to the Front? Oof. Oof. Harsh. Although, the only good thing about that is him and
Hitler movie right there. Right?
Say it again.
That was his first Hitler movie.
Yes. And also what I love about it is some of the action scenes of him and Jan Murray beating up Nazis. And it's like, sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Good question.
Not quite Inglourious Bastards.
Good question from Sal. Did you discover anything, Burt, that surprised you about Shemp?
Well, yeah. Everything did, really, because I didn't come into this as knowing a lot about Shemp. And for me, it was a discovery along the way, saying, first of all, wow, how funny he is. And also, again, going back and reading the history, they say that, Shemp, after he left the Stooges originally and left Ted Healy, went on his solo career, and that it took him about, a few years before he found his footing at Vitaphone, and eventually, became a star of Vitaphone. No, from the very first picture he made with Jack, it was the first picture that was released with Jack Haley, Saltwater Daffy, which it's a buddy comedy. He didn't get equal billing, but he's got equal time in it and equal comedy, and that's where he does his blind act in that, and he does all of his scams and all of his routines, and you're like, he just hit the ground running as a star from the beginning. And then finding these pictures, and I was surprised to find just how, although he was always Shemp, he was also very versatile in a way that the other Stooges were not. and he was able to fit in so many of these pictures. And I discovered a lot of pictures along the way, watching all of his shorts, finding all the pictures that he was in, and saying, he did seem to have given up a career. I kind of wonder what he could have done had he not rejoined the Stooges, and had not died young. Where could he have gone, at age 60?
I completely agree. And I really would recommend people to purchase your book and then go through the filmography that you have in the back and really hunt through the Internet Archive and YouTube for some of these movies, because, like I said, some have like these washed out prints. I just the other day ran on the Internet Archive, ran into Love Thy Neighbor, which is a Jack Benny, Fred Allen throwaway movie that they made. And they were, for people who don't know, you might know the name Jack Benny, but Fred Allen was also a big radio comedian. They had a big on-air feud that lasted for years, and they really milked it on each of their shows. So, but there was this movie, and I'm like, all right. And listen, it's not a great movie, but at least I get to see him and Fred Allen interacting on film. And like you said, there are so many of these great Shemp projects that maybe don't hit TV, but you will be able to find them on YouTube or the Internet Archive. So it's absolutely worth it if you're curious. And the great thing is, this book will not disappoint people. It's excellent. It's called Shemp, and with an exclamation point, the biography of the Three Stooges, Shemp Howard, the face of film comedy. And I think you make a great argument for it, Burt, because literally, because of his diversity and showing up in these varied movies, from The Thin Man to Jack. I'm so glad you mentioned Jack Haley. I meant to the Tin Woodman, or the Tin Woodman from Wizard of Oz. Here he is with Shemp co-starring, and also was it in the Thin Man movie that he did the movie with Dick Powell, or was that a different movie?
That was was that Dick Powell?
Another Thin Man?
Yeah, another Thin Man he was in.
Okay,
because
a
couple of years after he was working with Jack Haley, he made a short. They loaned him out to another company. He made a short with Burt Lahr. So he appeared with the Cowardly Lion. There you go.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man. Seriously, I where can people purchase the book?
Well, I always like to say at your local independent bookstore, but
as they disappear, unfortunately,
you gotta find it. It's on Amazon, of course. You order on Amazon, they'll deliver to you the same day. What they're doing now, but it should be out there. Always, calling up that local Barnes and Noble and saying, "Get the book out there." People will buy it. It's Shemp. But I can always say Amazon. We have a website, shempbook.com, and I'm actually putting links to a lot of these films that are mentioned in the book. A little bit of book, so you can find some of them there. And we update it every couple of weeks, put another picture up there.
Oh, I'm so glad you're doing that. That's wonderful, man. Because again, I think if anything, it's just going to make people more curious beyond the Stooges output. All right, what else did Shemp do? And like I said, the occasional person will see the bank dick, or as Kyle mentioned earlier, seeing that Jimmy Stewart short on Turner Classic Movies. Yeah. But sometimes it's hard to find this stuff. So I'm glad you're helping people along the way. So go to the website, everybody, shempbook.com.
Shemp, by the way, made one film in color, and it was Arabian Nights with Sabu. And Shemp played Sinbad with a Brooklyn accent.
Outstanding.
Yeah, so there you go. He fits right into that. It was he. I think it was Harry Gribben that was with him on that. Although it may have been I'm sorry, the other name escapes me. But anyway, you'll see Shemp in that, and he's very funny in that. Throughout, he's just a running character throughout that.
And the various people that he worked with. Hey, I even I had this ready to talk about. Here he is with Billy Gilbert, who goes back to the silent era.
Oh, Billy Gilbert, he was in Arabian Nights with him.
That's great, man. Oh, good timing. There you go.
Thank you.
No, that's amazing, man. Don says thank you very much for bringing us great stuff. No, thanks, Burt. This is great. Are you working on your next book?
Well, right now, actually, I'm finishing up a documentary. I do film projects. Legs McNeil, who, I don't know if you know Legs. Legs wrote a book called Please Kill Me, which is the oral history of punk. Legs was one of the original movers and shakers in the punk scene back in the 70s with the Ramones and Blondie.
Sure.
And he wrote he and his co-author did a book called Please Kill Me in the mid-90s, which is right now in like its 70th printing. It's still out there. And Legs is a writer and a journalist, and he directed a documentary called Pusher Man that it should be coming out in the beginning of 2025. I produced it, co-wrote it, and am editing it. Got to be versatile these days. But it's about a man named Frank Lucas, who was a big heroin dealer in Harlem in the 1970s, and he was portrayed by Denzel Washington in the film American Gangster. So it's the true story of American Gangster.
Wow.
So we're doing that, and then I'm on to my next book, which trying to find somebody that people have heard of. I don't mean to keep bringing it up, but I want to do a book. I want to do a book about. Sorry, his name just escaped me. Mel Cooley from Dick Van Dyke. Richard Deacon.
Richard Deacon.
I want to do a book about Richard Deacon. I think he's got a great story.
Well, and people may not know, but Richard Deacon was a gay gentleman, and it might be interesting to read about a guy that obviously had to live that lifestyle during a more cloistered period. But regardless, from Leave It to Beaver to, of course, the Dick Van Dyke Show and all the films and television that he did over the years. No, I'm a big Richard Deacon fan.
And a pioneer in microwave cooking.
I did not know that.
The Richard Deacon microwave cookbooks in the 1970s helped put microwave ovens in houses across the country. But anyway, we'll find something to write about.
All right, because Sal is requesting, I think, a Telly Savalas biography.
Oh, great!
Who is another interesting career.
I mean, when I first came out to Hollywood to work out here, the Universal Sheridan Hotel up by where now is the Universal Studios and the theme park.
Sure.
Had a bar downstairs called Telly's, and it was Telly Savalas's bar, and he lived in the penthouse. And we used to see Telly Savalas out by the valet parking every day. How you doing, boys?
Outstanding, man! I had no idea in the immediate post World War II years he worked for the government in the positive propaganda division, kind of helping a lot of these Marshall Plan countries acclimate to Western thinking and a little more, help from America and stuff. And the guy really was a Renaissance man. He spoke many different languages.
Yeah.
And, and listen, hey, Kojak is, and certainly even while it was happening with the lollipop and all the goofiness and stuff, and as my buddy Don points out, the Players Club years when he was the face of the Players Club card. But he's really, his Twilight Zone and Kelly's Heroes and a lot of great movies. So, he's cool.
All right. That actually strikes a chord. That's a good idea.
There you go. All right, Sal. There we go. You've done good. Well, everyone's thanking us on the chat for the talk, and I will thank you, Burt. This was great. Once again, everybody, a fantastic book that deserves your attention especially if you're a Three Stooges fan. And yes, it may cause some debate among Stooge fans, but that's okay. Good, exactly. Good, man. As long as they're being talked about, that means their memory will stay alive. So yes, pick up Shemp and go to shempbook.com to not only order the book, but see some of these, maybe in your case, undiscovered movies of Shemp's that you've never seen before. So thanks for the great talk, Burke. Please let me know when you got when the punk thing is ready, because again, I like talking about 20th century pop culture in general, and I would love to talk to you about
I'll keep in touch for sure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Brian Bendis might be joining me tomorrow night. I think it's 50-50. But if not, we got great stuff rolling right up to Christmas. So until next time, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.